we are ready to get into the team. So we're looking at Wonseok first. Now, Wonseok using the Pelipper, Archaludon, Amoonguss core. Now, this is a core that we see all over VGC and Basque Legion. You can't forget about Basque Legion, right?
Yeah.
It is worth noting that one interesting part about this team is that it is going to be the Choice Scarf. I believe this is a very similar team to what Marco Silva used at I believe it was Lil, right? Yeah, Lil.
Yeah, it was
And
Lil.
yeah, and we see Goldango and Instant, and this core is just very strong, right? You have a lot of consistent Pokemon here. The double Ghost core is obviously great because you're kind of in a position where you can play around Fake Out, and even if you catch a Fake Out on the Archaludon, right, it's really nice because there's no, there's no punishment. You just get a stamina boost, and also too, Rain is just a consistent archetype. So I think Wonseok just leaning into a more consistent, strong team that just has a lot of good Pokemon across the board.
Yeah, and that team also actually won one of the USA regionals, the Baltimore regionals. Well, it was a little bit different and had the mouse hold over the Goldango, but yeah, definitely super strong core. And also, like, one of the main innovations in this team, like that we started seeing recently, like in the Marcos version, is the adaptability scarf, bus collision, providing like better presence outside of rain as well. So yeah, super solid team from Wonseok, and yeah, looks solid all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Scarf Basque Legion, as you mentioned, right, being a really good adaptation, you're able to outspeed things even without rain being set up, which I think is really nice, but you still get the benefit of rain. But going into Taro Okada's team now, we're going to be looking at a Rocky Helmet Ninetales. So not the most common item that you typically see on Ninetales. Also opting to drop Freeze Drive, which would be really excellent in this matchup, right? Being able to pressure Basque Legion and Pelipper. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that interacts. Also, too, looking here, we have a standard, Magmar set. We do have the Heat Wave choice over something like Overheat, right? But that's not too crazy. We have the Scale Shot set that I think is not only really popular now in general, but I think was really popular in Japan before it ended up kind of being an international thing. So, not too surprised to see that here. We also have the Coaching Sneasler, so you can kind of set up this really dangerous Dragonite, right? You get the coaching on the Dragonite, you're able to go for Scale Shot, you essentially got a free Dragon Dance while doing damage. Then we have a Samurott here with Razor Shell and Knockoff, so not being able to miss, which is a nice thing, I think. And also you get the benefit of sharpness on the Razor Shell. And then we have Goldango with, a very standard nasty plot make it rain set here. And this is a team that I believe Edu used to get top 8 at Lil Regionals as well, but
Yeah,
with some
exactly.
changes.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about before. Like, I think we were seeing some set changes in this team that are quite interesting, like the Rocky Helmet. But yeah, the base is what Edu used to top 8 Lille regionals just some days ago. With the Rocky Helmet on the 90s and the Encore and Protect over, I believe, Aurora Veil and Freeze Dry. And the Razor Shell on the Samurott as opposed to Aqua Cutter that Edu played. But yeah, really strong team. And actually, I heard some stories about this team from Edu's friends about how this team was built like very soon after the tournament and still ended up being so successful. So yeah, proving to be a really strong team. And Taro, really strong player, of course, piloting this team in this match. Looking
Absolutely.
forward to seeing how it plays out. How do you
Yeah, I
think
mean, it's
the matchup looks?
I think it's gonna be interesting to see the interaction because Ninetales obviously can take away rain, but we actually do have the match ready so we can see how it plays out. But I definitely think the Ninetales is gonna be very important here as we're kind of going into team preview. You don't necessarily want to lead it because you don't want your weather to get overridden, but we are going to see the Sneasler and Samurott come out against the Basque Legion and Pelipper. So Taro just really opting to lean into the Samurott here to put on some pressure, and Wonseok just saying, I'm going to lead Basque Legion, I'm going to put on pressure, and you need to respond, right? So I would say this board state is in a kind of interesting situation. I think Samurott's in a good spot, but it can definitely get hit for a lot of damage by Wave Crash, right?
Yeah, but like Samurott actually really interesting in this matchup. I mean, with the Assault Vest too, and the Dark and Water type, it pretty much walls the Rain mode from Wonseok Jang, except of course the Archaludon, which I would not be surprised to see in the back, maybe coming in this turn. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a really interesting part here too is how are you going to be navigating around the Sneasler, right? If coaching is able to get off into that Samurott, it starts becoming more and more threatening. But we're going to see Sneasler switch out here. It's going to be bringing in the Ninetales. So taking away the weather, which is super, super good here because now you're going to be taking less damage from the water moves. The Rocky Helmet chip is also going to come into play here, potentially maybe putting that Basket Legion in range of a future Sucker Punch if it comes out. And we're going to see the Pelipper also opt to attack here. So potentially, right, you can also miss here, right? If you opted to lock yourself into Hurricane, that could be not so great. But we are going to get a little peek into the back here. We are going to see the Archaludon and Incineroar.
Yeah.
I think Incineroar coming in here is a reasonable choice, right? You're able to intimidate the Samurott, and you're also able to be in an okay position in front of Ninetales.
Yeah, definitely. But you have to, yeah, really respect that. I think the interaction between and the Hurricane. The Hurricane actually connects in Hail, and like, but Ninetales leaves, and the knockoff removes the safety goggles from the Incineroar. What I was saying is, it's gonna be key, I think, in this match, the interaction between the Samurott and the Archaludon, because yeah, Samurott super strong against Wonseok's team, and Archaludon is the one that's going to have to deal with that. So Wonseok needs to be careful with managing that one.
Yeah, I think it was crazy how the Ninetales survived on like one, even though it got hit by the Hurricane, which I think is cool. I mean, Ninetales a very bulky Pokemon, right? But just being able to hang on, super, super clutch, because now you're able to obviously pivot this Ninetales later, and you can put it in a position where you can remove weather one more time. Pelipper might want to switch out or opt to go for a Tailwind here, just so you can get some extra advantage in the game. But we are going to see Fake Out goes into Samurott here. Very reasonable play. You don't really want it to get damaged, but we are going to see Blizzard come out here. Does any freezes come out? No. So we get Tailwind going, and now Wonseok does have the speed advantage in this game.
Yeah, I think Taro really misses not having Freeze Dry right now. This Blizzard not doing too much on the Pelipper, but still some useful chip damage. Maybe putting things in range from like Samurott's attacks later on. But yeah, like you said, the Ninetales leaving is super useful because yeah, it can be used for controlling the weather and just yeah. Being
Absolutely.
around a little longer, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100% right. I mean, the Ninetales obviously is super impactful in this matchup, but we are going to see Wonseok, even though you are in an advantage like speed position with Tailwind, you probably have to cycle your Incineroar out. You don't want to get hit by a Razor Shell, opting to keep the Pelipper in still. So obviously, the longer you keep this Pelipper in, the more it's going to get chipped. And if something happens to the Pelipper, you're not going to be in a great position. That being said, the parting shot coming out here, what is it going to catch? It's going into Goldango. So being able to catch the parting shot and going for Protect. So now getting yourself in a position where you can potentially threaten this setup, and you didn't allow the Incineroar to cycle out. That was kind of a scary play to make. Obviously, like there's no, like it's very unlikely that a Flare Blitz or knockoff would go into Samurott, but you know, you never know, right?
Yeah, that's a really nice switch, and like the Goldango right now has like some room to yeah, do things like with the Terra Water especially, but can also opt to Protect. Yeah, Goldango also putting decent pressure in this matchup, I would say. But yeah, interesting. I wonder who is Taro going to use the Terra on in this match. Yeah, like I think this turn is going to be really important. Like either this turn or the next. Like depending on how much value Taro can get out of that Goldango, I think.
Got it. Yeah, I think a big thing here as well that's going to come into play, right, is that you can obviously, you know, switch out this Ninetales, right, which is going to be super, super impactful. You're able to get in another Pokemon, potentially that Samurott comes back in, able to absorb both the Weather Ball and the Flare Blitz, right? So at this point now, you are in a position where maybe you've been able to cycle the Samurott into a position where it can threaten some big damage. And also, too, I think another really impactful part about this game is that now you have the Terra Water coming out, which means that you can sit in front of the Incineroar more comfortably.
Yeah, and yeah, we do see the Terra coming out. I was expecting that. Goldango is now able to leave knockoff, and I think it would have, yeah, I mean, couldn't be touched by the Pelipper, obviously, because it's in Hail, so it either has like Ice type, Weather Ball, or Hurricane. So yeah, Goldango chooses to Terra, to go for the Terra and to Nasty Plot and set up for bigger damage later. I think the game looking slightly in Taro's favor as of now.
Absolutely. I mean, getting that nasty plot off is no joke, right? We know Goldango, obviously one of the strongest Pokemon in the format, especially when being able to get that nasty plot set up. So I definitely think you're in a position where you have to play a bit reactively to this Goldango, right? Maybe wanting to preserve your Pelipper, get your Incineroar out, maybe have to absorb one, make it rain. What could be really scary here is if another nasty plot comes out as you're playing passive against the Goldango. I mean, it could put you in a position where it's gonna be doing even more damage, but it's just opting to go for a protect here, playing it a bit safe.
+2 is enough. I think
Yes.
like I think the +2 is enough. But the pausing shot into the Samurott, the problem is, what does Wonseok have right now to damage that Goldango? Because the Bascu Legion like doesn't have access to boosted Last Respects. And the Arcaudon doesn't have Rain to go for like Electroshot. So this is a tricky situation. What do you expect to see here, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? You mentioned that the Pelipper obviously not being able to cycle in is bad, and the knockoff making it even worse, right? Like, you don't necessarily want to be taking a knockoff on your AV as you're coming in, because now the Goldango's exerting more pressure. To be honest here, I feel like it might be an angle where, especially because Tailwind expires, you need to maybe try to switch Incineroar back in to catch a Shadow Ball coming out into the Archaludon, or you need to just go for an attack here and cycle out your Pelipper, so that way maybe you can play for an endgame where Basculation is able to win, right? But it's really tricky here, I think, right? Because Tailwind expired on the perfect turn. You were able to stall it out. Pelipper's pressured. I feel like the problem was Pelipper stayed in for too many turns. So it's kind of in this awkward spot now where like it kind of wants to go for Tailwind, but it also is like really pressured by Goldango. So is Arch, right? So I feel like you have to make a call here of what the Goldango targets.
Yeah, and we do see the switch from Wonseok trying to reset the raid, which he really needs. But this is really scary because, like we mentioned previously, the Archaludon without the Assault Vest is going to like just go down to Shadow Ball. So yeah, let's see what happens here.
We're gonna see Sucker Punch come out here into the Archaludon, not doing much damage, but probably trying to put it in range of a Shadow Ball, right? We're gonna see Shadow Ball come out here. It's gonna take out the Archaludon, so being called out on the switch out of the Pelipper. Archaludon going down here, that's a big KO. I mean, Archaludon's one of the key pieces of these rain teams, and really with that Electro Shot was one of the only ways to pressure it. The nice thing is, at the very least, you do now have your Basculegion activated a little bit more, right? You can go for a more powerful Last Respects. You have that adaptability. I'm just not sure if it's exactly in range to knock out that gold, but I could see it definitely doing that depending on how it's trained.
Yeah, I think so. I think it might be enough. Obviously, losing the Archaludon is not amazing, but yeah, at least you can trade it with a higher base power on the Last Respects, which allows Wonseok to be able to finish off that Goldango, I think. But yeah, I think, like you said, at this point, the Basculegion becomes the win condition for Wonseok. But the question is, will it be able to do enough?
Yeah, I mean that's always a tricky part, right? But I think the main thing is that at least like at the very least, right? You do have like an option here, right? Like it is still scary. Maybe you know, Taro's even going to try and well, ironically respect the Last Respects, right? And go for a protect here, so maybe you can capitalize off of that, right? But it's definitely a scary position, right? We can't forget that there is also fake out pressure on the board, right? So Goldango probably wants to go for a protect. You could opt for a read here and maybe choose to attack, but I think protecting and going for an attack with Samurott is probably the more traditional play you'd expect. But we're gonna actually see Wonseok try and call that out.
Yeah, actually, the Samurott switching out due to being intimidated wants to come back later with a slightly higher base power. But yeah, Goldango protecting. They are going
fake out
to the Sneasler, but
and Last Respects.
Ooh.
Oh wow, it's just gone. Yeah, I mean that's really tough, right? Like you brought in Sneasler because what was probably being assumed there is that Fake Out's going to go into Samurott and Last Respect's going to go into Gold, but Wonseok really making the smart play here and doubling into the Samurott, basically saying, I know you're going to protect Gold. It's too important in this game. Now it is a little bit interesting. I feel like you do have to use up Terra Water on Basculegion if you want to be able to go for the Last Respects into Gold, right? So you don't get knocked out by Sucker. Yeah,
100%. Like here, a Terra Water and and last respects into the Goldengo. Pretty good play because to avoid getting KO'd by Sucker Punch. But yeah, Wonseok really smartly realizing he needed to make a play because he was slightly behind in this game, and yeah, so going for it, and it works. And I think now actually this is looking pretty good for Wonseok.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing is like there's also maybe some potential counterplays, right? But Pelipper coming in here makes a lot of sense, right? If Razor Shell comes out into the Incineroar, you don't necessarily want it to go down yet. It's still good to have that resource available. So I feel like at this point Pelipper is a little more expendable, right? Obviously wanting to go for opting to not even Terra, so just risking the Sucker Punch, getting the last respects off on the gold. But if Taro had chosen to go for a Sucker Punch there, could have knocked out the Basket Legion. The nice thing is at least you have it preserved. And Razor Shell going into Pelipper, so straight up just calling out the no Sucker Punch. That was a super risky play. Like, I don't even know if you needed to necessarily risk that, but it works out, right?
Yeah, probably maybe what he thought was like the Basculiju might have maybe lived the Sucker Punch from that range, and he wouldn't have lived two anyways. So he decided to like not tear immediately. Not quite sure how much attack exactly has the like Samurott. I think that might have been the case. But yeah, now Wonseok with his last two against Taro's last three.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing here too is, you know, obviously with the Sneasler and the Golden Go knockdown on Taro's side, right? Like these are the last two Pokemon you have available. Ninetales doesn't exactly hit the Basket Legion very hard, right? So the thing is like you can choose to double into the Samurott here with Fake Out Last Respects, but it's a little risky because if Ninetales opts to go for an Icy Wind here, potentially Samurott can maybe get something done here. We're gonna see Last Respects come out, barely misses a KO, and Icy Wind does come out here. So now you have a little bit of pressure, right? You can go for something like a Blizzard and a Sucker Punch. I don't know if it'll be enough. Maybe even an Icy Wind and a attack, right? If you think your Samurott's trained fast enough. But I would still say this is probably a good position for Wonseok. But, you know, Taro obviously making the play that at least gives you like a semblance of an out here, right?
Do you think is there a way for Taro to KO the Basque Legion right now? Because otherwise, I'm not sure how good it looks for Wonseok, like after the Icy Wind.
I was gonna say, I mean, you can Icy Wind here and potentially, if you think that you're faster than the Basque Legion, right, go for a knockoff. But the thing is yeah, Ninetales not having Freeze Dry, I think, kind of ruins this endgame a little bit for Taro, right? Because if you had Freeze Dry, what you could do is you could Icy Wind Razor Shell into Incineroar, but we're gonna see Sucker Punch come out here instead. Probably going for Sucker Punch and Blizzard here. Encore actually, so locking the Incident, potentially giving an out if you can get a Freeze with Blizzard.
Yeah, in the last respects, getting the KO, but at this point, I think this is an easy end game for Sneasler. I think, like, the last turn was, like, really crucial, I think.
But we saw Sneasler get knocked out, right? By the fake out in Last Respects earlier, when Sneasler got knocked out as it switched in, right? So, we're actually gonna end up seeing the forfeit there. Obviously with that, obviously with that Sneasler being caught earlier in the game, right? It was a super impactful turn. You switch it in, fake out, and Last Respects came out. I think that was honestly where the momentum shifted a little bit, right? Because at first we saw, you know, obviously Taro was making some really high impact plays. You're getting in a position where this Golden Go is putting on a lot of pressure, but then we get to see the scary part of Basque Legion, which is if you remove too many Pokemon, then Basque Legion Last Respects is doing lots and lots of damage, right? And it's interesting too, because I felt like the Sneasler actually didn't really get to do much in that matchup. So I'm curious if we're going to see an adjustment on what's brought from Taro almost, because maybe that Dragonite would have been a bit more helpful with that multi-scale, being able to sit in front of Last Respects, being able to maybe go for a scale shot, right? Or even that redirection with Magmar. If you are having a, you know, obviously Goldango on the field, you'd love to protect it with Magmar. But what do you think could be a possible adjustment coming out from Taro here?
I mean, I think it was looking pretty good for him actually until Wonseok got the turn right, like calling the protect from Goldango. Like Dragonite could work, but I also feel like it's like some Pokemon on Wonseok's team can be problematic for it, like the Incineroar and the Arcaludon especially. Like Arcaludon getting on a scale shot would be a huge problem for Wonseok. Um, but yeah, like I think he played the
Yeah.
matchup pretty well. Like he just got Wonseok just played better, honestly. I think in my opinion. Like I mean more like he got more turns.
Definitely. You have to be careful with that skill shot, right? Especially as you mentioned, that stamina boost obviously coming out would not be so great. Then body press is able to put on pressure, especially on that Samurott, right? Of course, you can maybe Terra Ghost to get around that, but it's not the best situation to be in. And as well, too, I think a really important turn there that even gave Taro like Taro had some really solid turns, right? But I felt like that turn where the knockoff and the Shadow Ball went into the arch was a really big turn as well. That was like a super big turn, and then we kind of saw the momentum swing back a little bit on that call out, as you mentioned, of the fake out last respect. But we do have our game two ready, so we are going to see how they both opt to play and adjust. So very interested to see if there's any lead differences here. We are going to see we are going to see the Dragonite come out here with the Samurott, and we are going to see Basculegion and Incineroar, which I think is a really good adjustment. You called out that maybe there are going to be some physical attackers in the lead, so able to reduce the damage, and Basculegion potentially being able to flip turn the Incineroar back in.
Yeah, Taro also, yeah, like you said, thinking the Dragonite could put in work here. I actually still think it might, because the scale shot is so powerful, even after an Intimidate. And like, he just has, I think, room to just switch around and maybe do it later too. So I don't think that's gonna be, that's not working. But yeah, Intimidate is so strong in the lead.
Also, one thing to note as well, Taro got the win on your time last game, to my understanding. So that's actually really interesting. So even though Wonseok obviously putting yourself in a position where you had quite an advantage not being able to actually win. So we are going to see the flip turn come out here, able to reposition your Basculegion. I like the Intimidate coming out as well. I think getting an Arch here too is super scary for Taro, right? If you get hit by a scale shot, that could be really good here. But Razor Shot coming out here into the Incineroar, getting a defense drop, which could be big here. And we're going to see the Dragonite just keep itself safe for this turn.
Yeah, but the Archaludon here actually in a great spot, because it doesn't get knocked off on the switch like we saw in game one, and Wonseok probably has that Pelipper in the back, so it's comes in against the Dragonite that's intimidated, and the Samurott that's also intimidated and gets hit super effectively. So I think here Wonseok can start using that Electro Shot to great effect.
I mean, it's definitely impactful, right? Especially being able to go for that electro shot now. We kind of mentioned last game, one of the biggest problems is you were not able to put yourself in a position where you could go for electro shot safely because Pelipper was always on the field in an awkward spot. But I think this game, being able to get the Archaludon in earlier means that it's able to put on a bit more pressure with the electro shot, right? So we are going to see the Samurott switch out here into Gholdengo. We are going to see Scale Shot go into Incineroar. This should pick up because you are going to get a minimum 4 hits because of the loaded. Oh, actually, the loaded. Oh, no, yeah, because Protect came out. So you're going to be able to get the knockout here pretty cleanly. Incineroar being gone is actually a really good piece to remove, right? Obviously, Arch is in an okay spot, but I think being able to get rid of Incineroar here makes your life a lot easier if you're using the Dragonite and the Gholdengo, and even the Samurott as well.
Yeah, I agree. And also worth mentioning that the drop from Razor Shell helped significantly getting that knockout. Would have probably at least needed 5 hits otherwise. But yeah, that's, I guess, one of the strengths of using the move. And so now there is the Electroshot potential, like I mentioned, but that Gholdengo is actually quite problematic. But the Last Respects is once again activated due to the Incineroar being knocked out in the last turn.
Yeah, we saw last game how important the Last Respects was, right? Being able to put on a lot of damage. I think a nice thing here at the very least is you do have the pressure with the Basculegion, maybe forcing a Terra out of the Gholdengo. One play I could see being really strong here as well is maybe opting to go for that flip turn into Gholdengo and Electro Shot as you bring in your Pelipper. You can also just opt to go for something safe to double the Gholdengo like Terra Water Wave Crash, as we're seeing locked in here. and a pulse. You could also just choose to do the middle ground option, which is target pulse and the Dragonite and wave crash and gold. Whichever one Terras, the other one's probably going to go down here. So we're gonna have to see what gets locked here from Wonseok. But I think a big thing here too is that it's really, it feels like in these matches, how do you use the Scarf Basket Legion and how much like efficiency can you get out of it, right? If it's able to get a bunch of damage, if it's able to kind of pull its weight, then it really helps you in these games.
Yeah, I agree. Also, going for a play that is slightly risky with the Wave Crash on the Goldengo and the Pulse on the Dragonite. Yeah, and with the Goldengo protecting, and yeah, Dragonite obviously not protecting because it's faster, and going for the Scale Shot, which doesn't do too much due to the Intimidate.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. That looks like a good chunk of damage, right?
Yeah, about half, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because it's funny. I feel like with Scale Shot D-Knight, every time I see this Pokemon in action, right? You start watching its damage rolls and you're like, oh, okay, like, you know, it's just a little bit of damage. And then you see the second one and the third one, you're like, actually, wait a second, like this is a lot of damage, right? So it's a really interesting part of Scale Shot. I feel like it's actually surprising how much damage it really does. Like with 5 hits, right? It's 25 power per hit. So it's able to do a little bit more than like Outrage would do, which is insane, right? And we're gonna see the Pulse come out here into the Dragonite, which is just gonna knock it out. I do like the Protect from the Goldengo, right? You're basically saying like, okay, you have to lock into some move on the Basket Legion. Maybe it's even in Sucker Punch range now, right? You don't have the option of Intimidate anymore. So that could also be something that Taro was playing for here, right? Not to mention you still have the Terra available, so you can't opt to just go for Terra Water here. That being said, you have to be a little bit careful, right? Because obviously our Chaludon still has access to Electro Shot with Pelipper on the board when it comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Also, interestingly enough, we haven't seen the last one from Taro so far, right?
No, we have not. Yeah, it could.
Yeah,
I mean,
because-
it could potentially be that Ninetales, right?
Yeah, I think so too, because if it was the Sneasler, it would have made a lot of sense for him to send it out right now to get a KO on the Archaludon. I believe it's like, is it the Terra Stellar on that? Well, actually, even if it was, like, then he would be threatened by the Wave Crash. So, and he just protected the Goldengo too. But yeah.
Oh, we are gonna see the
Is it
switch
the
here. Is
Ninetales?
it into Ninetales? Is it Ninetales?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my God! Bring in Ninetales.
Yeah, blocking the Electro Shot, I think, here. And the Goldengo going safely for the Terra Water in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy, right? You're able to switch into Ninetales, you're able to clear away the threat of Electro Shot, and you opt to go for the Terra Water here. So kind of covering all your bases, right? And just going for a Shadow Ball, which actually is pretty strong here, right? Because if Electro Shot gets locked in, you Nasty Plot, you will have to play passive on the next turn. But now you're putting Pelipper in a position where it's pressured by Blizzard, right? So you can just go for a very safe Protect, go for a Blizzard, and then if Basket Legion comes in, it's still probably not going to appreciate the damage. You could also opt to go for an Icy Wind here if you expect Basket Legion to come in, to slow it down and then put it in a situation again where Goldengo can put on pressure. But I think a really big part of this match, which I think was like such a key part, is like, how do you manage the weather wars, right? And it felt like in that turn specifically, Taro gave themselves so much momentum being able to get that Ninetales in on the right call.
Yeah, exactly. And he exactly waited for like the right turn to do so. And by doing that and going for the Terra Water, it like protected the Goldengo so well. And this Pelipper doesn't even have White Guard, so I think Make It Rain might make sense here. But yeah, you actually need to protect the Goldengo in this turn, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing too here, right, is what is the Ninetales going to lock in as well? So we are going to see the Protect come out as well. I would expect to see something like a Blizzard, but Icy Wind could also make a lot of sense here as well. We are going to see the Blizzard come out here, get some chip into the Basket Legion. Had Icy Wind come out here, it might have been even scarier, right? Because then the Basket Legion would have been slower than the Goldengo potentially with another Icy Wind. But Blizzard also being good here too, right? Because you get some good damage on the Archaludon, and you're slowly creeping it into range of that Electro Shot. But potentially wanting the lock Electro Shot here again, it is kind of hard to punish this flip turn Electro Shot, right? Goldengo already burning up the Protect, but maybe Ninetales being able to do just enough damage to knock out that Archaludon in combination with that Shadow Ball. We're going to have to see. Actually, no, it can't because there was no Nasty Plot. So, yeah, this is actually really good, I think, for Wonseok, right? Because you can't even really pressure the Shadow Ball into the arch
Yeah,
for
right.
that much damage. So maybe you need the switch.
And like we mentioned actually in game one, the Archaludon is like such a big win condition for Wonseok because like there aren't that many Pokemon to really deal with that. I feel on Taro's team, but yeah, we see the 90s switch out in favor of the Samurott, getting hit by this wave crash most likely.
Flip turn going into
Oh no,
Samurott.
Victor, right?
Oh, it's bringing in Pelipper too, so now you can go for that Electro Shot into the Golden Go. I mean,
The
it's gonna
Golden Go
do
is
some.
faster. So what does he go for first? But we're mentioning that at the end of the turn, it's probably gonna get hit by the Electro Shot, which is really good news for Wonseok. Yeah.
Okay, Shadow Ball going into Pelipper, which is gonna knock it out. But again, you're boosting that last respects, right? Which is always really scary. So as you continue to do this damage, you are gonna be boosting it. That being said, Electroshock coming out here, it is going to be targeting down into that Golden Go, which means it should probably be able to get the knockout. Archaludon, obviously one of the strongest Pokemon in the format with those Electro Shots, being able to clean knock out that Golden Go. Samurott comes in, it's at half health. So Samurott not exactly in the safest range, right? It might actually get knocked out by that last respects, which is pretty scary here. That being said, you do have the pressure of Sucker Punch, which should allow you to get a clean knockout on the Basculegion. But what if Aqua Jet comes out, right? You Aqua Jet, get some damage, you don't get hit by Sucker Punch, and then you're able to knock out that Samurott. So it's a very complicated endgame here. I feel like you have to really make a big call here if you're on Taro's side, which is the Basculegion going to go for an Aqua Jet, try and get some damage, get around that Sucker Punch, or is it going to go for that last respects to try and get that knockout?
Yeah, also because of that Encore. Like, if you catch the Flash Cannon on a Protect from the 90s, and you can then Encore the Archaludon into that Flash Cannon, which is not really good against the Samurott, but I think that overall works for Wonseok, since the Samurott also can't hit super well the Archaludon, which on the other hand is a +2 special attack. So I think overall I give this like slightly to Wonseok, but yeah, let's see.
This might also be a really strong win condition because we saw Electroshock come out the last turn, right? So you can potentially encore into Electroshot here, which would be a really big deal. We are going to see the wave crash come out here, and Samurott survives on just a little bit of health. Does Encore come into this? Yes, it comes out into the Archaludon, which means it won't be able to attack this turn. Now your Ninetales can permanently just sit in front of it, and we're going to see Electroshock get locked in, but obviously doing nothing because Snow is active. So I think this might be a locked win position for Taro, right? Being able to lock this Archaludon in the Electroshock means you can just alternate going for Protect, but Sacred Sword going into the Archaludon.
That interaction is interesting because he chooses to go for the Wave Crash instead of the like last respects. I think actually the Wave Crash might do more with the Terra. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Actually. So
at this point, you have a free Sucker Punch, though, right? Like Sucker Punch into Basculegion, it's going to get knocked out. And then, you know, we're going to see, obviously, the Ninetales go for Protect here. And because the Archaludon's locked into this Electroshot, this is a locked win condition for Taro if you play correctly. So it's really interesting, right? Because the first game, Wonseok was so dominant, but lost to timer, right?
yeah,
So,
the game was crazy.
yeah. So you lose the timer. And unfortunately here, like losing in the game two, giving Taro a game to adjust, right? You definitely don't want to be losing the timer. Of course, everyone has fallen victim to the timer at some point though, right? Like this isn't a new thing, but yeah, we are going to see Taro take the game here, being able to knock out that Archaludon. I thought that was such